The Greek historian Herodotus, in his book History, written in 440 BC, wrote about a people called the Macrobians, Greek for long-lived. According to his descriptions, these people lived in what is now Sudan and were distinguished by their exceptional longevity. Herodotus noted that most of them lived 120 years, and some even longer, and attributed this to a special spring that was believed to be the source of their longevity. When they bathed in the spring water, their skin became shiny and smooth, as if anointed with oil. The water smelled of violet flowers and was so light that nothing floated in it, not even pieces of wood or lighter materials. Everything sank to the bottom. According to tradition, it was the constant use of spring water by the Macrobians that allowed them to live such a long life. For hundreds and even thousands of years since then, the idea of the fountain of youth has fascinated explorers, mystics, alchemists, and many others. For example, ancient legends describe Alexander the Great, 356–323 BC, who in his short life managed to conquer almost the entire world known to the Greeks at that time. And in his travels, he sought a river whose waters could heal the ravages of old age. In the 12th century, the story of the mythical King Prester John, a legendary ruler of a region of Asia where the Fountain of Youth was said to be located, was widely circulated. Later, in the 16th century, there is also mention of Juan Ponce de León, 1474–1521, a Spanish explorer and the first governor of Puerto Rico who searched for the Fountain of Youth in the area of modern-day Florida. During his travels, he became the first European to reach the shores of this region of the earth, and even gave it his name. Of course, no one has yet managed to find this magical source, but research in recent years suggests that perhaps we should look for it not outside, in distant and mysterious lands, but inside, in the stem cells of our bodies. It turns out that if we can stimulate the production of stem cells in our bodies, we can restore damaged tissue, slow down the aging process, and thus prolong our health and lifespan. But how do you stimulate stem cells? Dana Elia, PhD, a nutritionist at the University of Maryland, became interested in the topic in 2018 when she began experiencing severe elbow pain due to tendon degeneration, lateral epicondylitis, sometimes called tennis elbow. An orthopedist initially referred her to physical therapy, but after months of not seeing or feeling any improvement, Dr. Elia sought other doctors. The MRI immediately showed how worn the tendon was, she says. The doctor indicated that surgery was probably the only solution and set a date for 2 weeks later. In an attempt to find an alternative to surgery, Dr. Elia turned to medical literature. I was particularly interested in stem cell injections to treat my damaged tendon, but I realized that my medical history made this an unsuitable option. So she decided to try a natural approach. Among the studies she read about was one published in the journal Cell Stem Cell that looked at the effects of prolonged fasting cycles, a form of intermittent fasting, on the circulatory system in mice. The results showed that such fasting can reactivate stem cells involved in tissue healing and regeneration. Inspired by this and other studies, Dr. Elia decided to conduct a one-Hawaiian experiment over the next 2 weeks, where she makes personal changes, tracks them, and documents them. For the experiment, she explored an eating strategy that mimics prolonged fasting with the goal of reaping the metabolic benefits of fasting without entering a state of extreme starvation. To do this, she followed a diet based on controlled calorie and nutrient intake that allowed her to stimulate stem cells in her body and speed up the healing process, while avoiding extreme physiological stress. The surgery itself was successful, but to the surgeon's surprise, the condition of the tendon had improved significantly in just 2 weeks since the previous MRI. When I woke up after the surgery, the doctor seemed a little confused, she says. He couldn't understand how such a significant improvement had happened in such a short period of time, even though the surgery was still necessary. I shared with him the fasting simulation method I had tried, how it contributed to stimulating stem cells, and the research that supported it. Since then, Dr. Lee has continued to research the effects of nutrition on stem cells, and in 2020, she published a book, The Stem Cell Activation Diet, which reviews current knowledge about stimulating stem cells through nutrition. We all started life with stem cells, but as adults, only 0.2% of the cells in our bodies are stem cells, she explains. These cells are actually the driving force behind the body's maintenance and renewal mechanisms. They're like the universal raw materials that allow for repair, healing, and regeneration. Because stem cells aren't programmed to perform any specific function, they have the potential to transform into many different cell types and perform a variety of vital tasks. The rate of cell turnover varies depending on the type of tissue, she says. Small intestinal cells, which are constantly exposed to the complex chemical environment of the digestive system, are renewed every 4 to 5 days, while skin cells are replaced every 2 weeks. Skeletal cells, on the other hand, undergo a turnover cycle once every 10 years. But it's not just these tissues that have the ability to renew themselves. The heart is also capable of self-repair using stem cells, just like brain cells, a discovery that has important implications for our health and the body's ability to heal. Among the many studies demonstrating a link between diet and stem cell activity, one looked at the effects of dark chocolate, rich in cocoa, on the vascular system. Researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, wanted to study how flavonols, plant compounds found in dark chocolate in particular, affect the elasticity of blood vessels and the special stem cells, endothelial progenitor cells, that help repair blood vessels and maintain their health. The study involved 16 people with heart disease. For a month, they drank a cup of hot chocolate twice a day in 2 different versions. One version was high in flavonols, 375 milliliters per cup, and the other version was low in flavonols, 9 milliliters per cup. Participants drank chocolate milk in different orders. One month they received a flavanol-rich version, and the next month they received a low flavanol version, without knowing which version they were drinking in each period, to avoid bias. The study looked at 3 main parameters: blood vessel elasticity, which was measured by how quickly blood vessels returned to normal after pressing on the arm, similar to measuring blood pressure. Blood pressure, to see if eating chocolate helped lower it, and the number of stem cells found in the blood, which help repair and renew blood vessels. The results were surprising. When participants drank flavanol-rich chocolate for a month, the elasticity of their blood vessels improved significantly, meaning they returned to their normal state more quickly. Their blood pressure also dropped more compared to the month they drank low flavanol chocolate. And just as importantly, the levels of stem cells responsible for repairing blood vessels increased dramatically, sometimes 8 times compared to the period when they consumed low flavanol chocolate. If you take dark chocolate, really dark chocolate, 70% or higher, make hot chocolate with a high concentration of flavanols and drink it twice a day for a month, you can significantly increase the number of stem cells in your blood, explains Professor William Lee, a medical internist at Dartmouth College School of Medicine in the U.S. In 2019, Professor Lee published his best-selling book, Eat to Beat Disease, in which he looks at how certain foods can support the body's natural healing processes and improve the function of the immune system, blood vessels, and stem cells. We were taught in school that starfish can regenerate themselves and salamanders can regrow limbs, but humans can't. So it's true, we can't regrow a new arm, but our body can regenerate itself, and it does it every day, says Professor Lee. Green tea for treating brain injuries. Most of the time, stem cells reside in special niches in the body, where they wait for the moment when they are needed to act. For example, after an injury or when tissue regeneration is required. One of the most important niches is the bone marrow, which is home to several types of stem cells, such as those that differentiate into different types of blood cells, and others that differentiate into bone cells, muscle cells, and more. When the bone marrow receives distress signals from damaged tissue in need of stem cells, it reacts by releasing them into the bloodstream. What begins as a cry for help triggers a swarm of stem cells that, like bees leaving the hive, are released from the bone marrow and travel through the bloodstream to the site of injury, explains Professor Lee in his book. Like guided missiles aimed at a target, these cells have an internal homing mechanism that allows them to precisely localize to the damaged area. Once they reach their destination, they bind to local cells and the healing process begins. In the chocolate experiment, flavanol stimulated the production of stem cells that were responsible for repairing blood vessels in participants with heart disease. However, in healthy people, the extra stem cells do not immediately spring into action. Instead, they will wait in their niches until a distress signal is received from an area requiring repair, at which point they will be picked up and sent to the damaged area, just as the body does in situations of injury or wear and tear. Another thing that has become apparent to us in recent years is that stem cells are not just regenerative cells. They also act as factories for the proteins used in tissues that are growing or undergoing repair or healing, explains Professor Lee. When they enter an environment of injury, they instruct nearby cells on how to act to repair the damage. In other words, stem cells not only repair themselves, but also produce signals that induce other cells to create a healthier environment. Professor Lee adds that 48 hours after surgery, a dramatic increase, up to 14-fold, in the number of stem cells in the bloodstream can be detected, a phenomenon that reflects the body's natural emergency response mobilizing its healing mechanisms to repair damaged tissue. In 2012, researchers from Kindai University in Osaka, Japan, sought to study whether a substance found in green tea, the antioxidant EGCG, affected the activity of stem cells in the brain, and whether it could help in the recovery process after traumatic brain injury. To do this, they gave brain-damaged mice water laced with 0.1% EGCG and monitored the development of stem cells in their brains, specialized cells that have the ability to develop into new brain cells. The results showed that mice that drank water enriched with EGCG from green tea had stem cells appear in the injured area at every sampling time, on the first, third, and seventh days. In contrast, mice that drank plain water only had stem cells appear on the third day. Additionally, the number of stem cells found in mice that drank EGCG was higher, indicating that the compound has a positive effect on stem cell recruitment and healing processes in the brain. Stem cells can regenerate brain cells after a stroke and help create new blood vessels, which helps restore blood flow to the affected areas, explains Professor Lee. Similarly, after a heart attack, the weakened heart tries to call on stem cells to regenerate the heart muscle. When the tendons and nerves in the legs begin to atrophy due to peripheral arterial disease, the body calls upon stem cells to try to repair the damage. Even chronic wounds rely on stem cell activity to create new, healthy tissue that allows the wound to close. The problem is that as we age, our stem cells become weaker and less effective at performing their role. Aging is really a decline in the body's ability to renew itself, explains Dr. Elia. As we age, not only do the number of stem cells available to us decrease, but their ability to function effectively also decreases. This reduction is clearly visible in heart cells, Professor Lee said. At age 25, about 1% of your heart cells are renewed each year, he explains. But at age 75, the renewal rate drops to just 0.45%. Olive oil for bones. Recent years have seen rapid advances in the field of regenerative medicine, which is the development of methods to repair and restore tissue using stem cells, whether through direct transplantation, stimulation of stem cells present in the body, in situ, or the creation of artificial tissues and organs. Research on dark chocolate and green tea is not a direct part of this medicine, but rather offers an additional avenue for understanding ways in which the body's natural healing abilities can be enhanced through natural means. A review article published in 2019 by a group of researchers from Spain found that olive oil also has a positive effect on the body's self-healing process. The main ingredient in olive oil is oleic acid, which helps stem cells differentiate into more bone cells than fat cells, for example, thereby helping to prevent or reduce bone thinning in old age. It also improves the ability of cells to move and attach to damaged tissue, which helps heal injuries. The review notes that the extra fatty acids found in olive oil help increase the rate of cell turnover in blood vessels, meaning they help increase the production of new blood cells that support healing and overall health. In addition, olive oil is rich in various components that protect the stem cells themselves from damage caused by aging and oxidative stress, damage that can be caused by harmful substances in the body, and therefore helps maintain the health and vitality of stem cells, as well as improve their ability to perform their functions over time. Other researchers note that fish oil, whole wheat, green beans, turmeric, and fruits and vegetables such as avocado, garlic, celery, peas, apples, oranges, and berries all promote stem cell health. These foods provide important nutrients to help protect cells, promote their regeneration, and maintain proper function. Of course, not all nutrients support stem cell health. There are ingredients that you should avoid, or at least reduce, if you want to maintain proper stem cell function. One of the biggest offenders is sugar. In 2016, researchers in South Korea examined the effects of excess sugar on the function of cardiac progenitor cells in the lab. When they grew the cells in solutions with different concentrations of glucose, they found that after 3 days, the higher the sugar concentration, the fewer cells survived. In addition, the excess sugar impaired the cell's ability to assemble into organized tissue. The researchers also identified the mechanism by which the damage was caused. They found that mitochondria, the cellular organelles responsible for energy production, were fragmented into smaller units, impairing their ability to provide the stem cells with the energy they needed. Foods and drinks that cause blood sugar levels to rise can suppress stem cell production, thereby impairing the body's ability to repair its organs, warns Professor Lee. What's more, excess sugar damages and even kills many vital stem cells, such as those in the heart, bones, and blood vessels. People who need their stem cells to function properly are advised to reduce their sugar intake as much as possible. This means significantly reducing or even eliminating processed sugar, sugary drinks and snacks, and low-fiber processed foods that cause blood sugar levels to spike. Another harmful factor is salt. In 2013, researchers from the Medical College of Wisconsin in the U.S. used stem cells from the bone marrow of mice to treat other mice suffering from muscle damage. The collected stem cells usually help create new blood vessels, in this case, in muscle tissue. However, the researchers collected stem cells from 2 different groups of mice. One group consumed a normal amount of salt and the other an increased amount. It turned out that only the stem cells from the mice that received a normal amount of salt were able to help create new blood vessels. Dr. Alia warns that it's also important to pay attention to how you cook your food. Foods baked or grilled at high temperatures, as well as fried foods, tend to impair stem cell function. Our bodies need stem cells, concludes Professor Lee. Stem cells are the body's defense and self-repair system, and they keep the body alive. They have the power to keep the body young and ensure that we age in better health.